When Cindy was asked about her dreams, she would answer that she wanted to live for 200 years so she could spend all the money she had earned. Cindy started earning money as soon as she learned to read. Back then, when she was just 7 years old, Cindy figured out that you could make money out of thin air. She began by selling walnut shells to neighborhood kids and classmates, telling them they were bait for Thumbelina. One such walnut shell, with a silk rag inside, cost the naive children 10 cents. Her grandfather had given Cindy a whole sack of walnuts. One can only imagine how much money Cindy made from the little ones before the adults caught on and put an end to her enterprising little scam with a stern talk and a timeout in the corner. As she grew older, Cindy became more cautious and always operated within the bounds of the law. People said of her that money just seemed to cling to her. So no one was surprised when Cindy entered an economic university and graduated with honors. She chose law for her second degree. Starting with a small business and then expanding into a large company, Cindy became a renowned business coach and amassed billions. Not only did money cling to her, but also numerous lovers and friends who saw her not as a person or a friend, but as a symbol of luxury. They saw her luxurious homes with pools, villas on the French Riviera, a fleet of luxury cars, a private jet, a staff of servants, and the opportunity to live for free. Cindy referred to such people as locusts. However, she had one true friend who knew her since childhood and supported her in all her endeavors, both in joys and sorrows. Gwen could come to Cindy at any time of the day or night and give her a thorough talking to if she thought something was wrong. Gwen needed neither money, nor connections, nor power. Gwen simply loved her friend with all her heart and cared deeply for her. Cindy knew this well and considered Gwen to be a kindred spirit. Cindy's numerous sycophants saw how tenderly their idol treated her beloved friend and therefore envied Gwen's influence over Cindy. "What do you give a woman who has everything?" Gwen asked Cindy. "You're already so saturated with everything, you can't be surprised by anything. And what should I, a mere teacher, do? You even have a certificate for a piece of the moon." "A piece of the moon? That's incredible. Then just give me flowers, you know how much I love them. You're like a gift to me yourself. I already give you those daisies every year." "All right, I'll get you flowers and a jar of apricot jam." "Just how you like it," Gwen chuckled. "Better yet, give me one of your children, you have 3 of them anyway," Cindy joked. "For example, the youngest. I'll leave my corporation and all my money to him because, of course, I won't make it to 200 years. "Oh, Cindy, what jokes you have," Gwen said. "I've told you so many times, have a child for yourself. And now, you're almost 45, and things aren't what they used to be in your head, but it's not too late to at least adopt a baby. I divorced Dylan 20 years ago, and he deceived you, so what? Husbands come and go, but children remain. They're the support of our lives. And who will you rely on in your old age? You seem like a smart woman, Cindy, but you haven't figured out the main thing." "Stop nagging me already, seriously," Cindy said. "I'm already feeling down. By the way, speaking of Dylan, can you believe he sent me a wedding invitation and even sarcastically signed the card, saying, 'Come to my wedding with your husband and children.' So, are you going?" Gwen asked. "Of course," Cindy exclaimed. Challenge accepted. Cindy understood perfectly well. Her ex wanted to show off his superiority, that he still had something left in him and had found a new partner. Her female intuition suggested that she should decline the invitation and ignore the wedding. But on the other hand, curiosity was driving her to see it. She was unsure if it was worth putting herself through such stress. They had parted ways not on friendly terms, but as real enemies. When she got married, she was 23, but even then Cindy was already standing firmly on her own feet and had managed to earn her first $1 million. She loved her husband and trusted him. She transferred some of her assets to his account, agreeing that he could return them at any time. It was her rainy day fund. And then, 2 years later, when that rainy day arrived and Cindy's business needed urgent financial support, Dylan simply vanished along with the money, blaming her for all his faults. He just left his wife and went to the Maldives, from where he sent the divorce papers. Cindy felt deceived and abandoned. Moreover, she developed a distrust of other men, so she no longer wanted to marry. She had lovers, whom she changed as often as gloves, and she was considered a heartbreaker due to her attractive appearance. Her value was further enhanced by her bottomless wallet. Numerous girlfriends and friends quietly envied her and cursed her luck while publicly praising her as a living goddess, eagerly hoping for crumbs from her table. A couple of days later, the friends met again at a cafe. "I have an idea, but you probably won't like it," Cindy said. "I've decided to go to the wedding after all, but I want to play a joke on Dylan. I'll show up with a young woman and present her as our daughter. Let him suffer knowing he left me pregnant and stole my money. But this girl should be natural and attractive, not a Botox doll." "You've lost your mind," Gwen was astonished. "Why go to all this trouble just to attend a wedding? And what will you do afterward? And if Dylan gets curious about this daughter? You'll end up making a fool of yourself. Besides, who will agree to play your daughter?" "Well, for the right amount of money, I think I can find someone willing," Cindy explained. "I'm sure he'll be too scared to ask about the daughter's life. You can be sure of that. He's cowardly and vain and won't want to ruin his reputation if he even has one. Meanwhile, I'll have my fun and get some satisfaction. The only thing left is to find a pretty girl who won't be recognized by anyone we know. You're not going to calm down until you get what you want, are you?" Gwen asked. "Just keep me posted, please. You're like my fourth child, I swear. I'm always worrying about you, afraid you'll get into some kind of trouble." "Everything will be fine," Cindy winked at her friend. "You'll see, Dylan will dance to my tune at the wedding." On her way home, Cindy pondered her plan. She could hardly believe she was capable of such deception. She was also curious about how her ex looked now. She hoped he had lost his good physique and luxurious black hair. Standing in a long traffic jam on the bridge, Cindy imagined herself, looking stunning, walking and holding her fake daughter's hand and glaring proudly at her tormentor. Dylan would be moved to tears, just like in Brazilian soap operas. Then Cindy and her daughter would discreetly slip away, leaving him only with disappointment and guilt over his betrayal. Of course, Dylan would try to call her, but she wouldn't answer, just to make him suffer. These thoughts brought a smile to her face. She liked her plan for revenge from start to finish. While Cindy imagined herself as the victor, someone tapped on the side window of her car. Cindy jumped in surprise. Where did a person come from on the bridge? "What do you want?" Cindy yelled. "Are you a stupid kid? Have you lost your mind? How did you end up on the bridge?" "Sorry," said a delicate female voice. "I'm selling soft toys. Please buy one." A fragile young man was holding a basket full of plush teddy bears. But then the stranger did something that greatly surprised Cindy. She took off her hat, and a cascade of long, luxurious chestnut hair tumbled out. The young man turned out to be not a young man at all, but a lovely young woman around 20. Cindy caught herself thinking how surprised she was by such an unusual girl. The girl was indeed very attractive. She froze and looked at Cindy in fear, who, in turn, stared back at her. Regaining her composure, Cindy realized she might be missing an opportunity and decided to act. "All right, get in the car," she commanded. "I have a proposal for you." "Don't be afraid," she reassured the frightened girl. "I won't do anything bad to you. If you're looking for a decent, well-paying side job, I can offer you one. So, are you getting in or not?" While Cindy was persuading her to get in, traffic on the bridge started moving again, and the cars behind them began honking. The girl hesitated for a moment, but quickly jumped into the front seat. The Mercedes smoothly began to move. Cindy decided to break the tense silence and clarify the situation. "You just need to pretend to be my daughter for one day." Maggie's eyes widened, and Cindy had to explain about the wedding, the unfaithful husband, and how she wanted to take revenge by presenting Maggie as their mutual daughter, whom Dylan would see for the first and last time. Cindy also mentioned that Dylan still didn't have any children. "And I thought, since he wanted to humiliate me, he'll get the full measure of it. He'll see that he has a beautiful daughter and will regret ever hurting me," Cindy said. "As a woman, you should understand me. I'm sure you have someone who wronged you too, and I can help you get revenge. And I can pay you right now." "I'm not vengeful," Maggie replied. "Even though my parents abandoned me, and I lived in an orphanage. There's no one I need to get revenge on. But I do need money. I recently graduated from college as a designer, and I've been kicked out of the dorm. The apartment in the backwoods that the orphanage gave me is falling apart. My savings are only enough for a month's rent for a room, so any money would be helpful. I dream of renting a one-bedroom apartment with a bathroom. Can you imagine? I won't have to wait in line to wash. My whole life, everything has been shared. I really want to live on my own, without waiting in line for anything." "What's the problem?" Cindy exclaimed. "I'll pay the difference, and we'll exchange your shack for the apartment you dream of. Do you think I would hold back? Live and be happy." "Is it true?" Maggie asked, not believing her ears. "It can't be." Maggie reminded Cindy of Gwen. Cindy continued. "Of course, you might not believe me, but to prove my serious intentions, we're going to make a little stop," Cindy said cheerfully and suddenly turned the car around. While Maggie, stunned by the offer, was coming to her senses, the Mercedes stopped in front of a trendy, expensive boutique. At the entrance stood a doorman who, recognizing the car of a regular customer, hurried to open the door. His surprise was evident when Maggie emerged from the car in an old jacket and worn jeans. But the doorman, being experienced, hid his astonishment and greeted the girl. Maggie felt embarrassed, blushed, and took a step back, unprepared for such a reception, as if she were a VIP guest. Cindy took her by the hand and, like a child, dragged her into the luxurious establishment. As soon as they crossed the threshold, well-groomed saleswomen rushed to meet them. "Well, here's the deal," Cindy ordered immediately from the doorway. "See her? Today she's your target. Turn her into a little businesswoman. And also, girls, we need an evening dress, shoes, and accessories. We're going to a wedding. Everything will be done to the highest standard," said the senior saleswoman and led Maggie to the fitting room. Cindy was served a cup of coffee and small pastries. Settling into a comfortable chair, she began to wait for the transformation. Soon Maggie appeared, dressed in a luxurious suit and expensive shoes. She was unrecognizable, and the stylists had done an excellent job. Cindy was presented with several outfits for Maggie, including casual styles. The last reveal was Maggie in an evening gown. When the girl appeared on the small stage, Cindy stared at her, mentally celebrating such a daughter. Her hair was neatly styled and pinned at the back. The emerald dress, which reached her knees, accentuated her figure, the brightness of her chestnut hair, and her green eyes. Maggie's petite feet were adorned with elegant stiletto heels. The overall look was airy and romantic. Even the consultants were captivated by the girl, who had transformed from an ugly duckling into a beautiful swan. "Wow!" Cindy exclaimed. "We'll outshine everyone at this wedding. Great job, girls. Send me the bill, and I'll make sure to include a generous tip." Admiring herself in the mirror, Maggie couldn't tear her eyes away. She smoothed the dress with her hand, examined the shoes, and twirled around like a first grader excited about her first day of school. "Change back into what you were wearing and let's go home." "You'll need to get used to it," Cindy commanded. "Right now?" Maggie asked, surprised. "Aren't we going to pick up my things? I can't wait to get back to my little room and wear my old clothes. My place isn't very nice. My neighbor constantly takes my stuff. But I left some documents and my favorite cactus there." "Of course, you can't leave your cactus behind," Cindy smirked. When Maggie entered Cindy's home, she was amazed by the high ceilings and the luxurious decor. She was even more startled by the housekeeper, who hurried over to the mistress with the question of whether to serve dinner. Seeing the questioning look from the staff, Cindy explained that Maggie would be living in the house from now on. "Lindsay," she addressed the housekeeper personally, "please arrange a room for Maggie across from mine. This room will now be my daughter's." "Who?" the astonished housekeeper asked. "What daughter? Don't you have a daughter? And where has she been before?" Cindy brushed off the servant. "Don't ask unnecessary questions. Maggie is my daughter." Lindsay muttered something to herself and went off to prepare the room for the girl. Finally, Cindy decided to inquire about her guest's past life. "I grew up in an orphanage," Maggie said. "I didn't like it much because I was constantly mistreated. But honestly, there isn't much to tell. I always envied other kids who were taken in by their parents. They would go on hikes, fishing trips, or to the movies on weekends. And I would cry from the hurt. When you offered me the chance to be your daughter, I was so happy that I didn't even think about the consequences." "Forgive me for shouting at you back then," Cindy said. "But you showed up in the right place at the right time, so consider yourself lucky. And, hopefully, I'll be lucky with you too. I need to teach you a few things before we go to my ex-husband's wedding. I see you're a smart girl, picking things up quickly. So, I think it won't be too hard for you to play the role of my daughter. I'm planning to tell him that I had you 20 years ago, so we need to learn the same story about your childhood, youth, and so on. Be careful not to say anything extra. He's a cunning man and will figure things out quickly." "Yes, I'd love to." Maggie agreed happily. "I'll consider you my mom, even if just for a day. By the way, why aren't you asking about payment?" Cindy asked. "Remember, all terms need to be discussed beforehand, and this is formalized by a contract. Here it is. Read and sign if you agree. But it says here that the service you're hiring me for actually involves helping you buy an apartment." Maggie exclaimed in surprise. "I thought it was a joke." "There are no jokes here, seriously," Cindy said. "I'm like the wind, I don't back out." The women laughed. After signing the contract, Maggie calmed down a bit but couldn't believe her luck. Just for a day of light work, she would have her own nice place. Moreover, Cindy inspired trust. "I wish I had such a fun and fierce mom," Maggie thought gratefully, looking at Cindy. The evening was settling into twilight, and then they went to their rooms to rest. The next day, Maggie was to be introduced to her new wealthy life and its various rules. "Wake up and shine, little bird," Cindy exclaimed, throwing open the curtains in Maggie's room. Bright light flooded through the windows and made the girl open her eyes. "It's still 6 in the morning," she mumbled. "Can I sleep a little more?" "No, a little more. Time waits for no one. It's time to learn how to be wealthy." Cindy laughed, shouting as she began to tickle Maggie. The girl burst into laughter and jumped out of bed. It was clear that Maggie was overjoyed. Cindy herself prepared a light breakfast. They went to a renowned chef who was a good friend of hers. The etiquette came easily to the girl, and she had a well-developed speaking style and refined taste. Within a week, Maggie was no longer the naive girl Cindy had met on the bridge. She now resembled a true lady of high society. And then the long-awaited wedding day arrived. The stylists had done a magnificent job on Cindy and Maggie's appearances. Now, the girl was indistinguishable from a high society socialite in both appearance and behavior. To make a grand entrance, Cindy decided to arrive at the wedding last. She ordered a luxurious limousine and instructed that the car should pull up to the entrance where everyone in the restaurant could see it. Fortunately, the restaurant's windows stretched from floor to ceiling. All the guests were already seated at their tables when the event host announced that Mrs. Cindy and her daughter had arrived. In wealthy circles, Cindy was always well known, so the guests were shocked to hear she had a daughter. The buzz in the restaurant immediately ceased, and all eyes turned to the red carpet that ran through the entire luxurious dining hall. The groom, who was seated like a king in the presidium with the bride, was most intrigued. His eyes widened in shock when he saw Cindy, radiant and dressed in a luxurious black gown with a train. Next to her was a delicate 20-year-old girl with a cascade of thick red curls. All present were intrigued by the scene. Eyes were fixed on Maggie as guests scrutinized her in detail and whispered among themselves. But Maggie was prepared for this and handled it with grace. Cindy was pleased with her scheme. As they took their seats at a separate table, Maggie quietly tugged on Cindy's arm and pointed with her eyes toward where Dylan and his bride were seated. Cindy was momentarily speechless. Sitting next to her ex-husband as his young wife was a perfect replica of Maggie. The same girl, who in turn was staring at Cindy and Maggie, not taking her green eyes off them. "What's going on?" Maggie whispered. "Who is that? She looks exactly like me. Did you know your ex-husband had a bride like this? Did he deliberately find someone who resembles me to make a mockery of me? Look at how everyone is staring at me. No one will believe now that I'm your daughter. Your plan is ruined. It's so embarrassing." "Calm down, Maggie. I didn't know about Dylan's bride. I'm shocked too," Cindy replied. "Clearly, no one will believe you're my daughter now. What a misfortune. It's a complete failure. It's my fault. I should have checked who he was marrying first. Look at him, sitting there smirking, taking such a young bride. She must be after his money, as Dylan can hardly be called a handsome man now. Did you know you have a double?" "Of course not," Maggie said, blushing under the guests' gazes. "Though anything can happen in life. Can I call you Aunt? I'd like to go home. I'm not comfortable here." "Sure," Cindy agreed. "You can call me Aunt. The driver will take you home, don't worry. I'll come by once I find out who this girl is." When the host continued with the program, Maggie seized the moment to quietly leave the event and head home. Cindy eagerly watched the groom and bride, trying to catch any spark between them, but there was none. The bride sat like a statue, occasionally smiling at the photographer and guests who congratulated the newlyweds. The groom, on the other hand, was as pleased as a peacock, giving compliments, cracking jokes, and occasionally glancing at Cindy to gauge her reaction to the event. Cindy skillfully hid her disdain for Dylan and her surprise at his young bride. A few minutes later, an opera singer took the stage and amazed everyone with her magnificent soprano. While she sang, and to avoid disturbing the performance, the guests, tired from sitting for so long, stood up to mingle. It seemed like the perfect moment to approach the bride. "Hello, let me introduce myself. I'm Dylan's ex-wife," Cindy began, deciding not to beat around the bush as she had very little time. "How did you end up marrying him? And by the way, what's your name?" "My name is Sarah," the girl replied quietly. "I know you're his ex-wife. He told me when you entered the hall. You're very beautiful, and your daughter is too. It just so happens that I'm marrying him." "Thank you for the compliment," Cindy said. "You've noticed that Maggie looks very much like you. If you want to talk about it, take my phone number and give me a call. Maybe I can help you." "Don't worry, he won't find out, and I advise you not to mention this conversation to him. I know him too well." "Okay, I'll call you," Sarah said, as Dylan appeared in the doorway, and Cindy decided it was best to leave. "Did you find out anything?" Maggie asked. "Why does that girl look so much like me? I can't settle down here." "I found out a little," Cindy replied, sitting in a chair. "Her name is Sarah, and from her mood, she doesn't seem too thrilled about the marriage." 3 days later, early in the morning, Cindy received a call on her mobile phone. It was Sarah, crying and asking to meet in a cafe on the edge of town to avoid being tracked by Dylan. Cindy immediately agreed and rushed to wake Maggie, who was sleeping soundly in her room. "Wake up, Maggie, your double is calling. It looks like she's in trouble. Get ready, we're going to meet her." Maggie didn't need much convincing. She jumped up as if she were heading to work. An hour later, they arrived at the designated cafe. Sarah was already waiting for them at a table in the far corner of the room. "Hello," she greeted the women. "I'm sorry for breaking down and crying on the phone." "Hello, Sarah," Cindy said. "This is Maggie. You both probably noticed that you look very much alike. Could it be that you're twin sisters? And finally, tell us why you were crying today and why you were in such a bad mood at your own wedding yesterday." "I'm glad to meet you, Maggie," Sarah smiled. "I'll explain everything. I've always lived with my mother, and I've never had a sister. My mother is ill and needs a lot of money for treatment. When Dylan and I met, he gave some money for my mother's supportive therapy, but I never saw the promised funds for the surgery. It seems to me he deceived me because when I asked yesterday when we would take my mother for surgery, he evaded the question. As for the possible family connection, we can ask my mother." "Let's go to my home," Sarah suggested. She and her mother lived not far from the cafe, on the edge of town, in a small but cozy apartment. When Cindy and Maggie entered the room, they saw that Sarah's mother was confined to a wheelchair. "Hello," Sarah said. "This is Cindy. And this is Maggie." "Indeed, we look very much alike," Sarah said. "My mother's name is Ashley." Sarah turned to her guests, but then froze and went pale as a ghost. It's her," Ashley whispered. "How could this happen?" "Mom, what's wrong?" Sarah asked, concerned. "Who is she?" Ashley took her daughter's hand and pointed to Maggie. "She's my daughter," Ashley said. "You're twins. I committed a sin 20 years ago by abandoning my own child. Your father left at that time, and I didn't know I was pregnant. Then I lost my job. When you were born, I realized I couldn't support both of you. So I left one baby right in the maternity hospital. It was a hard time, and the doctors didn't judge me, understanding my situation. I went home with you in my arms." "I'm so shocked," Sarah said. "I guess you did this out of necessity." And now I have a sister and a beloved aunt. Cindy was stunned by the unexpected coincidence. She had never anticipated such a turn of events. After talking and crying to their heart's content, the mother and sisters, along with Cindy, decided that Sarah would continue living with Dylan to try to get a divorce and the promised money. Meanwhile, Maggie would take her mother and move in with Cindy, where she would receive proper care. "I won't let my niece beg for money for her mother," Cindy said firmly, banging her fist on the table. "Ashley, are you agreed? Tomorrow, you'll be admitted to the best clinic so you can get back on your feet after the surgery. I'll cover all the expenses. And I won't allow that scoundrel to ruin Sarah's life like he ruined mine." "I agree," Ashley said the next day, regarding the follow-up surgery. She soon became friends with Sarah. Sarah called from Dylan's house, saying she had found the marriage contract she had foolishly signed without reading it. It stated that the cunning rich man would not give her a penny in case of divorce. Furthermore, there was no mention of Dylan taking any responsibility for her mother's treatment. "So, he deceived me," Sarah exclaimed. "Don't be afraid, file for divorce," Cindy commanded. "I'll send you my lawyer. Don't sign anything without him." While Cindy was sorting out matters with Ashley and Sarah, Maggie wandered around the house, feeling restless. Neither the surrounding luxury nor the exquisite meals pleased her. She was tormented by the guilt of not working. When Cindy returned home, the girl confronted her with her complaints. "Aunt Cindy," Maggie said with frustration, "I feel like I'm just a doll living here. It's not right. I don't want to be a freeloader. Maybe there's some work I could do? I could clean and make the beds instead of the maid. Or maybe I could cook." "Absolutely not," Cindy exclaimed. "I won't let you waste your talent in the kitchen. If you insist, we can go to the office, and I'll hire you as a junior designer. We need young, promising talent. Well, are you in?" "Yes," Happy Maggie exclaimed and started hugging Cindy. While the girl was getting acquainted with her new workplace, Sarah handed over the document. "I'm not going to divorce you, dear," Dylan shouted. "Do you want to humiliate me? What will people say? A young wife running away from a tyrant husband after just a week. No matter how many lawsuits you file against me, I won't give you a divorce." Despite his statement, each time the court session was postponed because the husband simply didn't show up. Later, Cindy learned that the postponements were Dylan's doing, as he played golf with and was friendly with the court members. So the divorce remained stuck in limbo. Meanwhile, Ashley, after the surgery and with the care of her daughters, was improving every day. After 2 weeks, she was already making tentative attempts to move around. "See, Mom," Sarah said, "you saw my first steps? And now I see you walking again." The joy was boundless. And Cindy looked at their happiness, feeling a sense of peace in her soul. She was pleased to realize that her boundless abilities could significantly help someone. It was time to choose the promised housing for Maggie. Cindy and the sisters went together to view the property offered by the realtor. It was a cozy apartment with a beautiful view of the river and a well-maintained park. They liked the place, and Cindy signed the contract. Maggie was thrilled. They went to celebrate the purchase at the very cafe where they had once met. Cindy, watching the sisters, was pleasantly surprised by how much family roots could influence people. The girls had transformed, becoming more trusting, open, and most importantly, braver. To some extent, it was Cindy's own accomplishment, and she mentally praised herself for it. "But I have to go," Sarah sighed. "I'll head to the house Dylan and I shared. Maybe he'll agree to the divorce today?" And she left. Why won't he give the girl a divorce? I think there's something behind it, Cindy thought. Without further ado, she called a detective agency and asked them to compile a dossier on her husband. In the evening, when Sarah returned home after the cafe meeting, she was surprised to find that no lights were on. Usually, the house was lit up with all the lights. She was also struck by the silence, which was unusual at that time of day. Dylan usually played music loudly or entertained a group of friends. She walked down the hallway to turn on the lights, but stumbled and fell. It turned out Dylan was lying on the floor in a pool of blood. He had a head wound and was barely breathing. Screaming in shock and fear, Sarah rushed to her husband and bandaged his head, trying to stop the bleeding with trembling hands. She grabbed the phone and called for an ambulance, which arrived quite quickly. When the doctor examined Dylan, who remained unconscious, he said that Dylan had been struck on the head with something. When the police arrived, Dylan regained consciousness for a moment. "Who tried to kill you?" the officer asked. "My wife did," Dylan cynically lied. "She hit me, sneaking up from behind." The officer turned and gave Sarah a stern look, leaving her speechless in the face of such audacity. "But what can we do?" "You are under arrest on suspicion of attacking your husband," the officer said, putting Sarah in handcuffs. He's lying about everything." "I didn't do it. I was with my friends and can prove it," Sarah cried out. "We'll sort this out at the station," the officer replied and put her in the police car. The investigators didn't believe Sarah's claims and sent her to jail. But she did manage to make one call. She called Cindy and briefly explained the situation. While Maggie was negotiating with a lawyer and visiting tearful Sarah, bringing her clothes and food, Cindy was already sitting in the detective's office, where he had prepared a substantial folder of information on her ex-husband. "This is so much material, and you managed to gather it all in just a few days," Cindy marveled at the detective's work. "Yes, and it's far from simple," the detective replied. "Moreover, your Dylan seems to have no skills in hiding his tracks, which would have been helpful. Look, here are receipts showing his debts from gambling losses. There's a multi-million-dollar card debt here, and here he bet on the wrong horse at the races and lost again. Here's a record of the betting, more cards. Yes, he's quite the gambler, and not just any gambler, but one who frequents an exclusive elite club where only millionaires are admitted. Your Dylan has lost everything and now owes two creditors, one a small-time criminal and the other a much larger sum to a shrewd businessman. The interesting part is that this debt will be cleared if he marries a young woman within a month and lives with her under the same roof for a year. Only then will the second creditor, who is a major businessman, forgive the debt. So that's why he won't divorce Sarah," Cindy exclaimed. "He's working off the debt, and the poor girl is his hostage. What a scoundrel, willing to deceive everyone and anyone." "Thank you for the information. You've been very helpful," Cindy said as she paid the detective. She took all the evidence and headed straight to the jail. When she arrived, she found that her lawyer was already there. Maggie was sitting and waiting for her to come out. The lawyer had taken statements from neighbors who had seen a motorcyclist in a helmet enter Dylan's house and then run out with some kind of crowbar, which he threw away nearby. The lawyer also managed to obtain footage from the street surveillance cameras. It clearly showed a man in a motorcyclist's suit attacking Dylan. The lights were on in the windows, so everything was clearly visible. Then the lights went out, and the stranger came out with a crowbar, just as the neighbors had described. The weapon used in the attack had already been fingerprinted, and the man was being searched for based on the vehicle's license plate number. The lawyer was negotiating to have Sarah released from custody on bail until the circumstances were clarified. "This is great," Cindy exclaimed. "At least one good piece of news, if you can call this situation good." Soon, the lawyer came out with Sarah, who was trembling like a leaf in the wind. "Maggie!" Sarah cried and threw herself around her sister's neck. "I was so scared at first. Dylan was covered in blood, and then this prison. Why is all this happening to me?" "Don't worry," Cindy comforted her. "It's all behind you now. You're exonerated. The perpetrator is being sought, and Dylan will have to answer for false testimony and large-scale fraud. The three of us decided not to tell Mom about the bad news for now. It could negatively affect her already fragile health." The next day, everyone went about their business. Dylan's wife, as well as Dylan himself, faced criminal charges due to the newly uncovered circumstances. The court finally granted Sarah her freedom from the criminal husband. The long-awaited decision was made, but without the signature of the judge who had previously indulged Dylan. That judge had been removed from office for abuse of power and bribery. Dylan himself was sentenced to 2 years in prison and would have to work off his debt as a servant for his creditor after his release. Dylan now realized that he would have to give up everything: the house, the car, and all his savings. He was reminded of this right behind bars. No amount of pleading or scheming could shift his debt onto Sarah. Catherine had also started working at Cindy's company as a sales manager. After a while, Ashley was discharged from the hospital and was already taking confident steps, albeit with a cane or some assistance, but still on her own. Cindy decided to send her mother and the twins on the long-awaited vacation. "You're our guardian angel, Cindy," Ashley said through tears. "I don't know how to thank you. You found my little Sonia, helped me get back on my feet, saved Sarah from Dylan's clutches. And now you're arranging such a luxurious vacation for us. Because now you are my family, which I never had. I am left alone in this world. What good are all these money if I can't share them with my loved ones? You're like a sister to me. And your daughters, well, they're like nieces." The two sisters embraced. Their lives had just become brighter, and Cindy was no longer alone. But, as the saying goes, trouble comes knocking at the door. That evening, Sarah received calls from creditors demanding repayment of her husband's debt while he was in prison. Cindy took it upon herself to help with this issue as well, paying off the first person from the criminal network. Through her lawyer, she proceeded to deal with the second creditor, a well-known millionaire in the city. When Cindy entered the office, she noticed that the head of the company, Richard, was casually having lunch in the communal cafeteria with his employees. She was pleasantly surprised, as she did the same in her office, not separating herself from the staff. "I think I can work something out with him," she thought, noticing that Richard had recognized her and invited her to join him for lunch. "I'd be happy to," Cindy agreed. "But first, I want to let you know that I came to request an extension on the debt my ex-husband Dylan owes you from gambling losses. The thing is, his current wife is very young and frightened. He's literally kept her as a hostage all this time, but you probably don't know that. Since Sarah hasn't been with him for even a month, I will pay off the debt for her." "Why are you helping your ex-husband's wife?" Richard asked. "Because now they are my family. Look at how many loved ones I've found recently," Cindy replied. She took out her phone and showed a few photos of her close ones. Richard's expression changed. "Is that woman in the photo?" he asked. "Ashley, the mother of the twins? How old are the girls?" Richard continued. "Cindy and Maggie will soon turn 21. Their birthday is in a week, and we want to throw a grand celebration," Cindy replied. "I'd like to meet them," Richard said. "I knew Ashley once. She was my fiancée, but fate had other plans. I think they might be my daughters, as the resemblance between us is quite evident." Interesting, Cindy said, surprised. They do look somewhat like you. Would you like me to introduce you to them? They decided it would be best for him to meet them on their birthday. For a whole week, Richard and Cindy prepared the venue for the celebration and looked for gifts for Maggie and Sarah. The details of the meeting were kept a secret. The twins' birthday finally arrived. Cindy took Ashley along with her daughters to the location she had planned for the celebration. When they entered the richly decorated hall, adorned with fresh flowers, they saw Richard holding a bouquet of flowers. Ashley immediately recognized him and gasped. "Richard, is that you?" she asked in astonishment. "Yes," Richard replied with a smile. "Long time, no see, Ashley." "Mom, who is this?" Maggie asked. "This is your father," Ashley said. "Father?" Sarah exclaimed. "Where did he come from?" "That can't be true." "Anything can happen in life," Richard replied. "Your mom and I broke up a little over 20 years ago. I moved abroad at that time." Cindy stood there, smiling, feeling happy to witness the reunion of her beloved ones with their father. She went to the tearful and happy Ashley and embraced her shoulders. "Don't cry, you'll see, life is just beginning," Cindy said.